The jungle didn't breathe, it pulsed. Every leaf, every shadow felt alive, like it had been watching for centuries. The air was thick with heat, buzzing insects, and something heavier, something that made even birds fall silent. Lina Torres tightened her grip on the vine-covered rock face and looked back at her husband, Miguel. He was behind her, panting, sweat pouring down his brow. "You okay?" she asked. Miguel nodded, motioning to continue. "Let's just find that waterfall and get out of here before we melt." They had followed a barely visible trail from an old travel blog, seeking out an untouched cliffside cascade hidden deep in the Matadi jungle. What they found instead would pull them into a darkness far beyond any travel guide. They stumbled upon the cave just past noon. It gaped low in the hillside, hidden behind a curtain of vines, almost as if the earth had sealed it shut but failed to finish the job. Lina hesitated at the threshold. The air pouring from within was unnaturally cool, tinged with the scent of rotten iron. Miguel flicked on his flashlight. "Let's just peek inside," he whispered. A few feet in, the beam caught something buried beneath moss and soil, shaped mistakably. Man-made. Miguel knelt and gently pulled it free. A tattered military backpack, covered in grime, leather straps half dissolved. He turned it over. The name tag was gone, the insignia faded into obscurity, but when he unzipped it, he froze. Inside lay a journalit's cover, scorched on one edge, the pages curled and stained, cracked GoPro lens spider-webbed but intact, and a pair of rusted dog tags, one caked in dried blood. "Lina," he murmured, voice trembling, "this isn't old." Tucked into the bag was a laminated operations card dated barely a year ago. Phantom, Go, classified. Tier 1 deployment. Status, missing in action. Lina stepped back, her voice thin. That's the team they searched for last year. Right? The ones that vanished out here? Miguel didn't answer. His hands were shaking as he lifted the GoPro. Its power light blinked red for a heartbeat, then died. They reported the discovery to a ranger post on the edge of the park. Within hours, the site was crawling with soldiers in plain uniforms, unmarked vehicles and clipped voices speaking into encrypted radios. The cave was cordoned off with tarps and floodlights by nightfall. The jungle trail was erased. 2 days later, a forensic analyst named Marta Celaya sat alone in a cold briefing room. The contents of the backpack spread across a sterile metal table. She'd been pulled from a cold case unit in La Paz, told nothing except, "It's Echo. We may have something." She slipped on gloves and carefully opened the journal. The first few pages were illegible, burned or soaked beyond saving, but further in, writing emerged, tight, slanted letters in black ink, with occasional smears of dirt and what looked like blood. Day 4. We're off map. GPS loops. Something's wrong with Cross. Keeps whispering to himself. Swears he saw eyes. Watching us last night. Elias doesn't sleep anymore. Day 5. Radio's fried. Static and whispering. But no one's pressing the mic. We buried Morse today. Whatever's in that bunker. It's not from this world. She flipped through the journal. With growing dread, sketches appeared, some of jungle terrain, others far more disturbing. One showed a crude drawing of a soldier standing before a massive stone face, mouth open, something crawling out. Marta blinked and closed the journal. Her fingers were cold. She turned to the GoPro. It had taken a hit, but the memory card remained intact. After carefully cleaning the contacts, she inserted it into the terminal. The monitor lit up, a file loaded. The timestamp flickered. June 17th, 2311. The screen showed 6 men, faces smeared with sweat and war paint, crouched around a small fire. The night pressed in close, black and suffocating. One of them, likely Elias Voss, looked directly into the lens. His voice cracked. "If this ever gets found, tell my daughter I'm sorry. We were never supposed to come back." Marta replayed the clip twice. That line, "We were never supposed to come back," was more than fear. It was knowledge. She leaned back in her chair, pulse hammering. They hadn't stumbled into a natural disaster or gotten lost. They had been sent to vanish. As the video continued, Distorted sounds began bleeding through distant screams, mechanical clicks, then something that made Marta's blood chill. Lullaby. Soft Spanish. Sung off-key in the background as the soldiers began to argue then scream. The screen went black. A final image flickered into view for less than a second. A stone altar, covered in markings no one had seen since the war. One of the men, his face missing, stood behind it. And behind him, something watching Marta exhaled sharply and leaned forward. The jungle hadn't given up this. His backpack is a mistake. It was a warning, and something still waited inside the cave. Rain beat down in relentless sheets, turning the tarmac of the covert airstrip into mirrored glass. A single black military transport aircraft idled under a dull gray sky. Engines low, door open, no insignia. No welcome. Captain Elias Voss stood alone at the bottom of the ramp. One hand gripping the strap of his duffel, the other clenching and unclenching by his side. His jaw was tight, his eyes scanning the empty landscape as though expecting anything to stop this. But nothing ever did. He boarded inside. 5 men were already seated, spaced out and silent, each absorbed in their own tension. No greetings, no nods. These weren't rookies on a first mission. These were ghost-hardened, highly decorated men pulled from different units across 3 countries, stitched together for something no one wanted to admit existed. At the far end of the cargo bay, a man in civilian clothes sat with a metal briefcase across his lap. His face was pale, his eyes too calm. Elias hated men like that, paper pushers in suits who signed off on death like it was paperwork. Captain Voss, the man said, standing. I'm Warden Hale. I'll be your handler. Elias didn't take his hand. Mission brief.
Ollie!
Offered the case. Inside, but I'll say this. What you're being asked to do doesn't officially exist. Your team doesn't officially exist. If anything goes wrong out there, no one's coming. Elias opened the briefcase. Inside was a dossier marked Phantom Echo in red ink, a map of the Bolivian jungle with an area blacked out, a photograph that made his stomach tighten. It showed a bunker half-sunken, stone-faced, wrapped in vines, old but untouched. The caption read, Target, Echo Site 12, Suspected Remnant Facility, Recover Intelligence. No trace. Remnant Facility, Elias asked, already dreading the answer. Hale nodded. Bold War Era Research Base. Unacknowledged. He paused. Have reason to believe something survived. Kind of something, Elias pressed. But Hale only replied, don't go off script. That night, they lifted into the sky, under cloud cover and silence. Elias didn't sleep. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the bunker, that dark doorway, and felt something staring back. The rest of the team was handpicked. Lieutenant Shane Cross, Communications and Tech. Brilliant, jittery, always too quiet. Sergeant Rami Alan, Demolitions and Field Repair. Deadpan, loyal, Private Leo Huxley, the greenest of them. Kid who shot like a machine. Specialist DeMarco, Navigation and Recon. Stoic, ex-Mountain Ranger, Corporal Quinn Morse, ex-Field Medic. Known for pulling soldiers out of things no one else survived. Elias knew none of them well. That was the point. No prior bonds, no risk of loyalty clouding judgment. Ghost teams were designed to disappear together, if they had to. As the transport descended into the Bolivian highlands, the terrain below turned unforgiving. Thick jungle like a breathing wall, river veins pulsing through the green. There were no roads where they were going, no paths, only coordinates. They landed under the cover of darkness on a remote plateau. From there, it would be a 3-day trek. Into the exclusion zone dense, uninhabited. Government-redacted terrain. Day 1, the jungle was like stepping into a different world. It didn't sound alive, it sounded alert. The team moved in silence, communications tight, weapons ready. By nightfall, they had made it 12 clicks in. Campfire was forbidden. They used heat packs and cold rations. Elias caught Cross staring. Too long into the trees. You see something? He asked. Cross flinched. No, sir. Just, the shadows are weird. Elias didn't say it, but he agreed. The canopy above was so thick it warped all light. There was no real day or night, just green darkness, then blacker dark. And every so often, that feeling like something was following them, it's just out of sight. Day 2 DeMarco reported anomalies in the compass readings. GPS refused to lock. They were walking by map and instinct. Echo site still west, he said. But the river's curving the wrong way? Land shifts, Alon offered, but his voice lacked confidence. By midday, they found the first Markaran old radio tower, overgrown with ivy. It wasn't supposed to be there. Rusted, leaning, but still humming with static, Cross tried to patch in, nothing but whispers and clicks. Not language's patterns. He looked pale when he stepped back. Think something's rebroadcasting. Our signal. Like what? Morse asked. I don't know, Cross replied. But we're not alone out here. That night, Elias recorded a log entry on a secure drive. His voice was flat. Day 2, team intact. Interference increasing. No signs of echo site yet. GPS corrupted. Crosses ... off. I don't trust the silence. Jungle's too quiet. At 0400 hours, Huxley reported movement near the camp perimeter. Elias found clawed tracks too large for any cat, too defined to be natural erosion. They circled the tents in a perfect spiral. The men didn't sleep after that. Day 3, the jungle thickened. The air grew hotter. The green closed in like a lung inhaling. Slowly around midday, they reached a stone wall covered in lichen. It looked like part of a ruined temple, not on any map. Vines covered carvings, symbols that didn't belong to any known indigenous culture. Morse ran a hand along the stone. This place shouldn't be here. No, Elias said. It is. Then they found the door. Steel, sunk into the earth behind the stone. Rusted hinges. No lock. Just a handprint scanner, long dead. Above it, barely visible, Echo Site, 12. Entry restricted. Elias stared at it for a long time before turning to his team. No one goes in until we recon the perimeter. Alon, rig a perimeter alarm. DeMarco, take the high ridge. Cross, stay the hell off that radio unless I tell you. Cross hesitated. Captain, if this is really Echo Site 12, why is it still powered? Egg. Everyone turned. The scanner had just blinked green. The green light pulsed softly, casting an eerie glow across the jungle floor. It shouldn't have turned on. Scanner was ancient decades. Old, probably dead tech. But it had blinked, clear as day, as if it had recognized something. Elias Voss stepped back from the door, eyes narrowing. Everyone off the threshold, he ordered. Now, Cross hesitated, then backed away. Alon tightened his grip on the grip trigger of his Claymore tripwire system. The team pulled into a defensive arc, scanning the foliage, the treetops. The ridge could be motion-triggered, DeMarco offered. Sensor light? Some of those models run off residual solar. Elias didn't reply. He stepped closer again. This time, slowly, quietly, the scanner blinked once more green, then nothing. No sound, no clicks, just stillness. Then, from somewhere deep inside the bunker, a soft hiss. Like a slow exhale, breath from something very large. DeMarco raised his rifle. Did you hear that? Heard it, Elias confirmed. We're not breaching this tonight. They pulled back half a kilometer to make camp, setting up a wide perimeter with alarms, tripwires, and IR sensors. No fire, no noise. The jungle's silence had returned, but this time it felt loaded. It wasn't just quiet, it was listening that night. Mission log by dim red light. Day 3. Echo Site found. Powered scanner activated on approach. We haven't entered. Team holding perimeter. Cross behaving erratically. Men on edge. Something's wrong with the air. It's heavy. Behind him, he heard low muttering. It was Cross again. Talking. Into the Cums headset, though it wasn't connected. No. I said I don't. We're not ready yet, Cross whispered. Elias approached quietly. Cross. The man flinched, nearly dropped the headset. What the hell are you doing? Cross blinked, dazed. I thought I heard something. It was coming through the static. Like a voice. A woman's voice. There's no signal out here. That equipment's fried. I know, Cross said, his voice shaky. That's why I'm scared. Elias made a note to isolate Cross from the radio for the rest of the mission. Day 4, they returned to the door. This time, the scanner didn't wait. It blinked green the moment Elias stepped close. With weapons drawn, the team entered. The metal door opened with a groan, dust falling in thick sheets as it slid sideways. Inside, a narrow tunnel descended. Into the earth, the temperature dropped instantly. The jungle heat vanished like a memory. They moved cautiously. Lights sweeping, the walls lined with old surveillance panels, rusted cabinets, shredded cables. Faded signs in Spanish and German warned, "Access restricted level 4 BOHAZR." D-Cross began, filming everything with the helmet cam. His breath fogged in the cold. "Jesus," Huxley whispered. "How far does this thing go?" Elias gave a hand. Signal moved deeper. At 50 meters in, they reached a wide room. Command center, maybe. Dead monitors lined the walls. At the center stood a table bolted to the ground, a stack of files still open, though water damage had bloated the pages. Alan approached one file cautiously. "It's in Spanish," he said. "But I see mentions of psychological trials. Subject contamination. Something called Proyecto Umbral Threshold Project." Cross knelt by a terminal, wiped the dust from the screen, and found it was still faintly glowing. He didn't press anything. DeMarco's voice came through on comes from the ridge above. "Movement outside the site? Something circling the trees." Leah stiffened. "Animal." DeMarco's voice dropped. "Too big." Back in the bunker, a slow thumping sound echoed through the air. Ducked rhythmic, heavy, not mechanical. Something walking. Or breathing. "Shut it down," Elias ordered. "We're pulling back." But as they turned to exit, Huxley froze. He stared into the hallway they'd just come from, pale and shaking. "Captain, who's that?" Everyone turned. There was no one there, just the hallway empty. Dark until Elias caught it too. A shadow not moving, but wrong, just slightly. Too tall. Too narrow, and then it moved sideways, without turning. Elias raised his weapon, stepped forward, but there was nothing there. Just cables swaying. Back to surface now. They emerged to find the jungle changed. Not visibly, but it felt different. The sky above was grayer than before, the trees darker. Insects had gone silent again. And in the center of their camp, their equipment lay turned over. Not destroyed, just moved. Deliberately. "Someone's toying with us." Morse said. "No," Elias muttered. "Something." That night, they lost DeMarco. He'd returned to the ridge at sundown for overwatch. His last coms were clear. Nothing new on heat sigs. Wait, scratch that. Got something west. Fast shit, then static. By the time they reached his post, there was no sign of him. Just his rifle on the ground. His helmet. Wedged between two trees, too high for a man to reach. They searched until dawn. No blood, no footprints. Just the silence again. Back at camp, Cross began to unravel. "I'm telling you." "I heard her again," he said, shaking. The voice. "She's in the static." "Who is she? Cross?" Elias demanded. "I don't know," Cross snapped. "She knows me. She said my name. She said we were chosen. Marked." Elias pulled the radio from his hand and smashed it under his boot. No more transmissions. But deep down, he feared it wasn't the radio that was the problem. It was them, whatever. They'd stepped into whatever echo Site 12 had been built over, or to contain it wasn't dormant. And it wasn't human. And now it was awake. That night, Elias dreamed of the jungle swallowing him whole. He could hear breathing deep and ragged coming from inside the trees. And somewhere in that breathing, the voice Cross had spoken of. Woman. Singing the jungle didn't sleep, even when the team closed their eyes. Its breath pressed against them. Hot and sour, it felt like it knew. Captain Elias Voss stared at the dying firelight, gun resting across his knees. He hadn't spoken for hours, not since DeMarco vanished. He was the kind of man who felt loss inwardly, where it burned longer. They'd barely spoken that day. Everyone was silent, brittle. No one asked about DeMarco. No one had the energy to pretend he might still be alive. Instead, they packed up camp at dawn, without words, and moved deeper into the jungle. Away from Echo Site 12, but not toward home. There was no way out now. Their satellite phone wasn't responding. GPS flickered, like it was underwater. And Cross, who was supposed to keep comes online, had become strange. More strange. Day 5, the jungle began to shift. The terrain no longer matched any topographic map. Trails they'd marked the day before had vanished. Trees stood in new formations. Even the sun looked wrong, as if it hovered too low. Too long, time's moving weird, Morse muttered. It's been hours. Sun hasn't moved. Huxley didn't answer. He just stared up at the light, lips dry and chapped, eyes wide. They found a clearing that afternoon, where the ground was covered in bones, small animals mostly, but dozens stripped clean and arranged in a spiral. At the center, a torn scrap of DeMarco's uniform folded. Alon crouched, picked it up with trembling fingers. This wasn't scavengers. This is ceremonial. Elias said nothing. He just turned to Cross. The comms officer stood apart from them, scribbling something into a journal. His hands were shaking, his lips moving soundlessly. Cross, Elias called. No answer, Cross. He flinched, turned, eyes glassy. I didn't do anything. No one said you did, Elias said. But I'm saying it now. Talk. Cross looked around, then tucked the journal into his vest. I'm logging interference patterns. That's all. Elias took a step forward. Since when do you draw? Your interference patterns. Cross's jaw tightened. You want to see them? Fine. He pulled out the journal and flung it at Elias's chest. The book flopped open, sketches falling into view, but they weren't maps. They were faces. Same face, repeated dozens of times. A woman, blank eyes, mouth open in song, her hair long and black, coiled in vines. Her hands wrung to many fingers, bending in places fingers shouldn't bend. Ilias's blood ran cold. What is this? I don't know, Cross said, almost whispering. I just see her. Every time I close my eyes. I think she's underground. Below Echo Site. I think that's what the bunker was built over. You're hallucinating, I'm telling you, Cross snapped. She's real. She's in the signal. She's in us now. Alon stepped in. Captain. No, Morse said quietly. He's already lost it. That night, Elias kept first watch. The journal lay beside him. He hadn't told the others what he'd found in the back. Buried behind the drawings was a list of names, their names with numbers beside each, dates, times. 2 names were crossed out, DeMarco and Morse. Elias stared at that for a long time. He looked up hand, saw Cross standing outside the camp perimeter, just beyond the sensors. Cross, called the man, didn't respond. He just stood still, facing the jungle. Elias rose quietly and approached, his boots crunching soft earth. When he reached him, Cross didn't turn. She's right there, he whispered, just beyond the tree line, watching. There's no one there, Elias said. Cross turned to face him. Elias stepped back. His eyes were completely bloodshot, ringed with dark circles. But worse, his lips were bleeding, cracked open from murmuring too long. There was something tattooed or carved into his neck. Elias couldn't make it out in the dark. You lied. To us? Cross said. What? You knew? You knew what Echo Site really was. Why we were sent here? You just didn't tell us. Elias stepped forward, furious. You'd think I'd bring men into this hellhole knowing what waited? I was given coordinates and a target, just like you. She told me different, Cross said, voice breaking. She said you knew. You promised her. Elias raised his rifle, instinct more than reason. Get back to camp now. But Cross just laughed a short, broken sound and turned into the jungle. Disappearing into the green dot, Elias returned alone. But someone had been in the camp while he was gone. Morse's gear was gone. So was Morse. And the journal. It's gone too. Alon stood staring at the fire, stunned. He just vanished. No sign of a struggle, Huxley whispered. They found a trail of boot prints leading west. But after 20 feet, the tracks stopped. Clean. As if Morse had simply lifted off the ground. Elias scanned the horizon.
Not pounding.
Cross was right about one thing. Something was here with them. Hours later, the screams began. One, long and ragged. Huxley jumped up, rifle shaking. That's Morse. No, Elias said grimly. That's something using Morse. The screams kept coming each time from a different direction. Closer, then further, and directly behind them. They turned. Fast dash nothing. Just the trees, just the jungle. Later, Elias sat alone, running his hands through his damp hair. Huxley was shaking in his sleep. Alon hadn't spoken in over an hour, and Cross was gone vanished. Into the trees, with their only record of what was happening, Elias opened his own log. Day 5. We've lost 3. DeMarco, Morse, and now Cross. No blood. No noise. They just vanish. I believe Cross was communicating with something. And I believe he was telling the truth. He thinks I'm the reason we're here. I'm starting to think he's right. He paused, fingers hovering over the recorder. What if the mission was a delivery, not a recovery? He closed the log. In the shadows beyond the trees, something moved, just briefly, then faded. The jungle floor felt unnatural now, too soft in places, too brittle in others. Elias Voss moved carefully, rifle raised, scanning every shift of shadow, every movement of leaf or light. They were down to 3. Alon. The quiet demolitionist barely spoke unless prompted. His hands trembled slightly now when he reloaded. Huxley, barely 20, was white-knuckled and wide-eyed. He flinched at everything. And Elias no longer pretended this was just a failed mission. This was a burial ground. Only the dead didn't stay buried. They moved east, following a path that wasn't on any map but appeared freshly disturbed. Vines had been slashed away, soil compressed. Someone or something had come through recently. Alon spotted faint footprints, one booted, the other bare. They're Morse's, Alon said. But the stride's wrong, too long, too deep, like he was walking, well heavier. Or being pulled, Elias murmured. No one replied. The trail ended at a ravine wide, deep, and hidden beneath thick foliage. At the bottom, something glinted. Elias looked through his scope. A steel hatch, circular, embedded into stone. Another access point, Elias said. Lower entrance to Echo Site. Was this in the file? Huxley asked. There was no file, Elias replied. Just coordinates. They climbed down carefully. The air thickened with each step. The ground was soft and damp. Elias knelt, pressed a gloved hand to the mud. Blood, thinned with rain. They reached the hatch. It was dented on one side, clawed, literal clawed. 4 deep grooves, each nearly a foot long. Elias examined them in silence. This isn't human, Alon. Pulled a small charge from his pack. I can breach this. Do it, Elias said. Quick. Inside, the descent began. A spiral stairwell led them down through damp concrete and rotting steel. Lights emergency-grade fluorescence flickered weakly along the walls. How was there still power? Huxley asked. Backup generator. Alon muttered, but it should have died years ago. At the bottom, they entered level B, marked by peeling paint and hazard signage. A cracked mirror on the wall read, Observation Deck 3, Psychological Containment. Staff O&L Wineside was a long corridor filled with observation rooms, glass walls smashed, overturned furniture, splattered stains long since dried. They passed an old intercom system. Static crackled to life as they approached. Then a whisper, a single word too faint to be sure. Elias Huxley froze. What? Did you hear that? Elias turned off the intercom. Keep moving. What? At the end of the hallway stood a sealed vault. Door. Unlike the others, it was pristine, untouched by time. A new locking mechanism blinked red. Alon approached it. This looks modern. Post-2000s. Keypads encrypted. Elias frowned. Why update an abandoned Cold War site? Turned to a nearby consultant. But behind it, a file cabinet still stood, its drawers warped from humidity. Inside were plastic-sealed folders, labeled in Spanish and English. Elias flipped through quickly. Subject 0 is responding to auditory sequencing. Female pitch range.
Ash.
Induces REM immediately. Bloodwork shows recombinant DNA markers. Foreign strands unidentified. Threshold exposure beyond 6 minutes. Results in irreversible psychosis. Huxley leaned over his shoulder. What the hell were they doing down here? Elias said nothing. He flipped to the back of the file. A photo slipped. Out. A woman. Young dark hair. Blank eyes. Her mouth wide open. Caught mid-chant. The caption read, Subject La Madre. No known origin. Ilias's stomach turned. That's the face Cross was drawing. Huxley whispered. Elon stepped away from the vault. We shouldn't be here. But the vault began to blink green this time, as if something inside knew they were standing there, as if it wanted out. The lock clicked. They didn't open the door. They ran back at the surface. The air was wrong. Again thicker, electric. Storm had gathered above the jungle, black clouds swirling in unnatural patterns. Lightning cracked across the sky. But there was no thunder. The jungle had gone silent again, and that's when Elias saw them. Dozens of stone totems arranged in a wide circle around the clearing. None of them were there before, each carved into the shape of a twisted human figure. All had mouths open in screams. All pointed toward the hatch. Elias backed away, hand gripping his rifle. This place was never a lab, he whispered. It was a prison? Then what did we wake up? Alon asked, voice hollow. Elias turned to him. We didn't wake her. She's been waiting. That night, the whispers returned, louder now, in stereo, inside their ears, in their dreams. Elias dreamed of Morse again, his eyes missing, mouth stitched shut. He reached for Elias, with broken fingers. Behind him stood the woman, her eyes glowing, arms covered in vines and rot, lips curled in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She said only one thing, You promised me blood. Elias awoke with a gasp, covered in sweat. Across from him, Huxley lay curled up, mumbling to himself. She's in my head. She won't stop singing. Make it stop. Alon stood back to them, holding a pistol. Alon, Elias said cautiously. What are you doing? I'm not letting her take me, Alon whispered. He turned slowly as wild gun shaking in his hands. She's in everything. The dirt, the trees, us. Alon don't. The shot rang out before Elias could finish. Alon collapsed. Just like that, Huxley screamed. Elias rushed to him, but it was no use. The bullet had been precise, deliberate. He'd made his choice. They buried Alon beneath a tree that bled sap the color of oil. Huxley didn't speak. He just sat there, shivering. Elias crouched beside him. You need to stay with me, Hux. You hear me? We're not done. We're already dead, Huxley whispered. We just haven't stopped moving. Elias looked toward the ridge, the vault, the jungle, and the truth behind Echosite. Whatever was in that vault had been sent to recover. It was already outside. Elias Voss stopped keeping track of time around day 7. The jungle no longer obeyed logic. The sun rose wrong, too fast, or not at all. The moon hung low at noon. Insects moved in silence. Trees twisted just slightly. When you weren't looking, and they were no longer alone. Now it was just him. And Huxley. They hadn't seen Cross since the hatch opened. Alon was going to buy his own hand. Morse and DeMarco had vanished without blood or sound, and Elias, once the most controlled man in the unit, had begun talking to himself, or maybe not to himself. They moved through the undergrowth in slow, deliberate steps, Elias taking the lead. Huxley followed, face gaunt, hands trembling. What day is it? Huxley asked. Elias paused. Day 9. Maybe. Huxley squinted at the sky. Feels like it's always been day 9. It wasn't a joke. The jungle felt stuck like time had folded inward. They hadn't eaten in 2 days. The rations had gone bad maggots, crawling out of sealed packs, water turning to slime. They drank from leaves, but the water tasted like ash. "Why are we still going west?" Huxley muttered. "We should be trying to get out." "Out doesn't exist anymore," Elias said quietly. "You saw what's out there." "We ever even come in?" Ellerslie whispered. Elias didn't answer. They crested a ridge just after what should have been noon. Below them, the jungle dropped away into a massive sinkhole. Overgrown, but visibly unnatural-like, something had crashed down from above. Long ago, at the center, a black obelisk, 15 feet high, carved with symbols they'd seen on the vault. Unnatural. Not of this place. It pulsed faintly. Elias stared at it, throat dry. "This is what Echo's site was built around. Is that where she is?" Huxley asked. "The woman." Elias nodded slowly. "She's under it. Or part of it. Maybe both." They camped beside. The sinkhole, not speaking. Elias scrawled into what remained of his mission log. Day 9. Only Huxley remains. "I am not sure we're alive in the traditional sense anymore. Dreams and waking are merging. The jungle is changing us, are preparing us. The obelisk is ancient. She's near. She wants to be remembered." That night, Elias dreamed of Cross again. He was naked, smeared in black ash, kneeling before the obelisk. His mouth moved, whispering in a language Elias had never heard. Behind him stood the woman, the one from the drawings, La Madre. Her hair moved like smoke. Her eyes glowed like heat through meat. She reached down, touched Cross on the head. He screamed. His skull cracked outward. Elias woke in a cold sweat, breathing like a man drowning. Later that morning, Huxley stood at the edge of the sinkhole, staring into the abyss below. "There's a stairwell down there," he said. "Carved." "Into the stone?" Elias joined him. He saw it barely, but yes. Worn stone steps, spiraling into blackness. He placed a hand on Huxley's shoulder. "You don't have to come," Elias said. "Yes, I do," Huxley whispered. "She already knows my name." They descended. The air grew colder. The stone glistened with moisture, but there was no dripping sound, no echo, no wind. The spiral narrowed after 20 feet, then widened into a chamber massive domed, like a cathedral buried. Beneath the jungle, the walls were carved in symbols, scenes, sacrifices, soldiers, scientists. Something that looked like stars. At the center stood a stone slab, and on it, Cross. His body was suspended in Vine's arms spread, mouth open. His eyes were gone, sockets filled with writhing black roots. His chest rose and fell barely. "Jesus," Huxley whispered. "He's still alive." Elias stepped forward. "Cross, can you hear me?" The body twitched, then the lips moved. "She sees you, Elias," a voice rasped. Wasn't Cross's voice. It was layered, male and female, mechanical and organic, childlike and ancient. "You led them to her, just like you promised." Elias stepped back, horrified. "I didn't promise anything." "She remembers," the voice said. "You stood at her altar once, when you were still in the academy. You touched the stone." And then Elias did remember. Flashback, 2003, Perut training exercise. Naval officers deployed into jungle ruins for recon. Elias, then 19, separated from his unit, had stumbled into a buried temple. Inside a monolith, curved symbols. He'd touched it just once. He'd had fever dreams for days. Blood coming from his ears. Voices singing lullabies in languages he couldn't translate. They dismissed it as heat stroke, but someone remembered. Back in the chamber, Cross smiled with rotting teeth. "You've always belonged to her." Then he stopped breathing. The vines tightened, pulled his body into the ceiling. Gone. Elias collapsed against the wall, bile rising. Huxley knelt beside him. "This is real. All of it. She's not a ghost," Elias whispered. "She's a god." "No," Huxley said. "She's worse than a god. Gods need faith. She just needs memory." Elias looked around the chamber. Symbols flickered under, their feet glowing now, responding to presence. "She's waking up," he said. "And if she gets out?" Huxley stood. "Then we stop her." "How?" The answer came from the stone slab, phrase carved deep in Latin, Sanguine Claudator. "She is sealed in blood." Elias looked at it for a long time, then at Huxley. That night, they sat at the mouth of the sinkhole, silent. Elias opened the final page of his log. Day 9. "We've found her."
Oh, yes.
"She's underneath all of it under the jungle. Under the history, she isn't ancient. She's remembered. The jungle was the lock. Echo cite the key, and I was the hand that turned it." Looked up at Huxley. "I'm going back down there," Elias said. "With explosives?" Huxley didn't flinch.
Oh.
"You're going to blow it?" "I have to, I think." "I was meant to." He offered Huxley a choice. "Stay here or leave. Try to make it back to civilization." Huxley looked at the jungle, then at Elias. "I'm with you," he said. They descended the spiral one last time, this time with purpose. Elias carried the last of Elan's explosive charges. Huxley carried light. Together, they walked into the ancient throat of the earth, where the air itself whispered secrets in a voice not quite human. Each step felt heavier. Not from the gear, but from the weight of knowing. This was where it would end, or begin again. The chamber greeted them like a cathedral of wrought. Symbols across the dome glowed softly, as if blinking in time with a buried heartbeat. The obelisk at the center thrummed. Vines now moved visibly, curling along the floor like they were waiting. She was awake, not physically, yet. But her memory had filled the space like gas before the flame. Elias set the charges at the 4 cardinal points, as the ancient carving suggested. He moved with speed, precision. There was no time for hesitation. Huxley watched, fingers twitching near the trigger. "We set them to remote," Elias said. 15-second delay. "No margin for error," Kopi Huxley said. His voice was hoarse. Elias crouched near the obelisk, checking the final charge. As he turned, something shifted in the dark behind him. He raised his rifle too late. Figure emerged from the shadows, barefoot, covered in soot, skin pale and stretched. Morse, but his face was wrong. Eyes hollow. Mouth sewn shut by black vines twisted through flesh. Huxley cried out. "That's not Morse. That's what's left of him." Elias lowered the rifle. "He's a vessel." Morse tilted his head, then stepped aside. Behind him she appeared, not fully, not like a body, but as a shape in the darker, shifting mass of hair, eyes, arms that folded in on themselves. Her presence moved like smoke, but it had weight. She spoke without sound. "You brought blood. Yours will do." Elias clenched his jaw. "We brought judgment." He raised the detonator, but Morse lunged impossibly fast. Elias fired. One shot straight through his former teammate's chest. Morse crumpled. But the vines in him kept moving, dragging his body across the floor like a puppet mid-dance. The detonator flew from Elias's hand, skidded across the stone, and landed. Near the obelisk, the vines curled around it. Huxley dove. Fingers scraped stone, vines. Wrapped his leg, he screamed louder than he ever had before. "Hux!" Elias yelled, but Huxley didn't hesitate. Threw the detonator. Elias caught it. Then the vines pulled him into the obelisk's base, vanishing him into blackness. Gone. Elias didn't scream. He pressed the trigger. 15 seconds. The chamber began to shiver. The obelisk split at its base, pouring black vapor like blood. The carvings ignited in white flame. 12 seconds. Vines burst from the walls. Hands reached from cracks. Screams, dozens, maybe hundreds, filled the air, layered, atop each other. 10 seconds. Elias ran. The climb up the spiral was chaos. Stone fell around him. The walls pulsed like muscle. The temperature rose, then dropped, then rose again. Like the earth was convulsing, he reached the top just as the countdown hit 4. He dove into the jungle. His face dashed first, and then dashed boom. The earth shook like it was dying. The obelisk collapsed inward, sucked down into flame. A blast wave shot up through the sinkhole, launching black ash into the air. Trees snapped. Birds screamed, and everything went quiet. Hours later, Laius sat on a hill overlooking the smoking crater, coughing blood into his hand. His earpiece buzzed softly dead signal. The jungle was still again, not quiet in the way. It had been truly quiet. He looked up at the sun, sat right. Finally, he opened the last page of his log and began to write. Day 9 confirmed. Obelisk. Destroyed. Site collapsed. All subjects presumed Kia. Huxley didn't hesitate. He made the call before I did. He knew what it would take. The mission never should have happened, but it did. If anyone finds this, seal it. Salt the earth. Burn the maps. Don't look for Echo Site. She was never a myth. She was memory, and memory is forever. He closed the book, tears falling freely for the first time. He wasn't sure if he was alive or something beyond. But for now, the jungle had stopped whispering. They descended the spiral one last time, this time with purpose. Elias carried the last of Alon's explosive charges. Huxley carried light. Together, they walked into the ancient throat of the earth, where the air itself whispered secrets in a voice not quite human. Each step felt heavier, not from the gear, but from the weight of knowing. This was where it would end or begin again. The chamber greeted them like a cathedral of rot. Symbols across the dome glowed softly as if blinking in time with a buried heartbeat. The obelisk at the center thrummed. Vines now moved visibly, curling along the floor like they were waiting. Was awake. Not physically. Not yet. But her memory had filled the space like gas before the flame. Elias set the charges at the 4 cardinal points. As the ancient carvings suggested, he moved with speed, precision. Watched fingers twitching near the trigger. We set them to remote, Elias said. 15-second delay. No margin for error, Copy Huxley said. His voice was hoarse. Elias crouched near the obelisk, checking the final charge. As he turned, something shifted in the dark behind him. He raised his rifle too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, barefoot, covered in soot, skin pale and stretched. Morse. But his face was wrong.
Eyes hollow.
Mouth sewn shut by black vines twisted through flesh, Huxley cried out. That's not Morse. That's what's left of him? Elias lowered the rifle. He's a vessel. Morse tilted his head, then stepped aside. Behind him, she appeared. Not fully, not like a body, but as a shape in the dark, a shifting mass of hair, eyes, arms that folded in on themselves. Her presence moved like smoke, but it had weight. She spoke without sound. You brought blood. Yours will do. Elias clenched his jaw. We brought judgment. He raised the detonator, but Morse lunged, impossibly fast. Elias fired. One shot straight through his former teammate's chest. Morse crumpled. But the vines in him kept moving, dragging his body across the floor like a puppet mid-dance. The detonator flew from Elias's hand, skidded, crossed the stone and landed. Near the obelisk, the vines curled around it. Huxley dove, fingers scraped stone, vines, wrapped his leg. He screamed louder than he ever had before. Hux. Elias yelled, but Huxley didn't hesitate. He threw the detonator. Elias caught it. Then the vines pulled him into the obelisk's base, vanishing him into blackness. Gone. Elias didn't scream. He pressed the trigger. 15 seconds. The chamber began to shiver. The obelisk split at its base, pouring black vapor like blood. The carvings ignited in white flame. 12 seconds. Vines burst from the walls. Hands reached from cracks. Screams dozens, maybe hundreds filled the air, layered, atop each other. 10 seconds. Elias ran. The climb up the spiral was chaos. Stone fell around him. The walls pulsed like muscle. Temperature rose, then dropped, then rose again. Like the earth was convulsing. He reached the top just as the countdown hit 4. He dove into the jungle. Face dash first, and then dash boom. The earth shook like it was. Dying, the obelisk collapsed inward, sucked down into flame. A blast wave shot up through the sinkhole, launching black ash into the air. Trees snapped. Birds screamed, and everything went quiet. Hours later, Elias sat on a hill overlooking the smoking crater, coughing blood into his hand. His earpiece buzzed softly dead signal. The jungle was still again. Not quiet in the way. It had been truly quiet. He looked up at the sun. It sat right. Finally, he opened the last page of his log and began to write. Day 9 confirmed. Destroyed. Site collapsed. All subjects presumed Kia Huxley didn't hesitate. He made the call before I did. He knew what it would take. The mission never should have happened, but it did. If anyone finds this, seal it. Salt the earth. Burn the maps. Don't look for Echo Site. She was never a myth. She was memory, and memory is forever. He closed the book, tears falling freely for the first time. He wasn't sure if he was alive or something beyond it, but for now... The jungle had stopped whispering. To be continued in Chapter 8, The Recovery Team. Would you like to continue with Chapter 8? The Recovery Team, 1,000 words? You said, colon. Yes, ChatGPT said. Here is the full 1,000-word expansion of Chapter 8. The Recovery Team, continuing the story from the ashes of the explosion. The tone remains cinematic, psychologically haunting, and emotionally raw. With new characters gradually introduced as per your structure. Chapter 8. The Recovery Team. Word count. 1,010 days after the explosion, the jungle reopened, anew. Team arrived, clean uniforms, fresh gear, silent boots. These weren't search and rescue. There was something else entirely. Blackbird Division-off book, U.S. intelligence, no official record. Tasked with one thing only, recovery. At the head was Agent Mara Coilerly, 40s. Cold eyes, a scar down her temple that she never explained. She didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in containment. They didn't parachute in, they came. By land through a pre-cut trail that had somehow grown over in less than 2 weeks. Satellite views of the sinkhole were still corrupted. GPS flickered out as soon as they hit tree cover. They set up camp 3 clicks from the crater. By the second. Night 2 of the agents reported nightmares. Voices in the trees. Faces in the branches. Mara didn't log it. The jungle greeted them like it had the first team, silent, dense, wet with rot. But the sinkhole no longer smoked. The crater was still. Ash and stone had covered the spiral stairs. No bodies, no signs of an explosion. Only a half-buried metal object near the edge. One of the men, Dr. Sayer, brushed it clean. It was a notebook. Charred, soaked, but intact. Elias Voss's mission log. Mara read it in silence, by Huderly, each page, heavier than the last. Sketches, notes, coordinates. The final entry ended in smudged ink. If anyone finds this, seal it. Salt the earth. Burn the maps. She closed it. Tapped her cum, prepped the drone feed. One want 3D scans of the entire substructure, ground-penetrating radar, seismic imaging, everything, even after the collapse. Sayer asked. She glanced at him. You think this place is done? Day 2 of recovery, their drones sent back confusing data. The chamber under the sinkhole, where the obelisk once stood, was reforming. The stone had fused differently. Like an organic regrowth, rooms had shifted. The spiral stairwell was gone, but a vertical tunnel had opened in its place. No signs of human activity, no trace of Elias Voss, but seismic pulses from beneath the jungle. Now repeated every 8 hours, like a heartbeat. That night, Agent Mara found her way to the outer perimeter alone. She carried Voss's notebook in one hand, her sidearm in the other. The jungle wasn't quiet anymore. It whispered again, and she listened. She lit a cigarette and flipped to the drawing. Of the woman the one Voss had called La Madre. The sketch was crude but terrifying. A woman without a face, hair like vines, a mouth like a cave. "What are you?" Mara murmured. The wind shifted. The branches moved, and from the dark, a faint sound, singing soft, familiar. Her breath caught. She turned rifle up. No one but the song kept playing in her mind. It's like it was embedded in her. She returned to Camp Pale, trembling. She didn't tell the others. Day 3, the body was found at dawn, one of the Blackbird techs. Saunders was discovered 50 feet from the crater, lying face up, eyes missing. Chest carved with symbols matching those from the logbook. No blood. No signs of struggle, just a note written in blood. She remembers the one who broke the seal. Mara tightened her jaw. "Double perimeter," she ordered. "No one alone, no one unarmed. We're not recovering data anymore. We're shutting it all down." That evening, Dr. Sayer approached her tent, pale. We decoded the final entries. He said, "The symbols around the obelisk. Latin derivative." And Sayer swallowed hard. It wasn't just sealing her. The structure ACO-CT was a prison key. The obelisk was the last lock. "So it's open now," she said. "No. Not open, bleeding." She stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means she's leaking. Memory, voice, form, not physical. It's not yet, but she's already in us. You've heard her too, haven't you?" Mara said nothing. Sayer nodded. She doesn't want escape. She wants Echo to be remembered. "That's why we keep hearing her. She's a parasite," Mara muttered, "feeding off minds." Sayer corrected her quietly. Off guilt. That night, Mara recorded her own log. Day 3. Mission compromised. Containment at risk. 1 casualty. Psychological contamination suspected. I read Voss's words. He believed himself the key. That Echosite was never about recovery. Stumbled into an infection of thought, and we brought no cure. She closed the book and stared at the firelight dancing outside her tent. Something moved just beyond it. She rose, rifle in hand, stepped outside. The jungle was pulsing again. Sound, deep, throbbing, just beneath hearing. Like drums beneath. The earth at the edge of the light, a silhouette stood, not approaching, just watching. Male, staggered stance. Beard, Mara raised the rifle. "Identify yourself." No reply. She took a step forward. "Voss?" She whispered. The figure slowly lifted its hand held, something the detonator. Then it stepped back into the dark, gone. Mara stood shaking. Behind her, the jungle sighed, like something enormous had just shifted in its sleep. Agent Mara Coyle didn't sleep. She sat in her tent, gun across her lap, eyes locked on the half-burned journal. Voss's words seemed to shimmer now like heat on asphalt, shifting each time she looked. Memory is forever. She'd read the phrase 10 times already. Outside, the jungle pulsed softly, not with wind, but sound a low hum, like distant electricity. Or breathing earth. Her team was restless. No one had spoken since the figure appeared at the tree line. Foresaw whatever was left of him. They'd lost 2 more men in the night. No screams. Just empty tents. In one, a voice recorder was left on loop. Playing a woman's lullaby, sweet foreign, impossible to trace. Mara gathered the survivors at dawn. Only 5 remained. "We end this today," she said coldly. "Whatever's inside that crater, it burns," Sayer objected. "You can't burn memory, can't erase." Mara slammed the detonator on the table. "We can try." They reached the rim by midday. The sinkhole had changed again. No longer. Collapsed. A new spiral stairway had formed, clean, unweathered, like the jungle had rebuilt what Elias destroyed. And from below, a steady voice echoed upward, feminine. No words, just tone. She was singing again. Sayer froze. It's the same pitch sequence described in the research files. It's not a song, it's a signal. She's rebuilding her pattern in the minds of anyone who hears it. Then we stopped listening, Mara said. She stepped forward, but someone was already there at the base of the stairs. A man, thin, shirtless, dirt-caked and trembling. Elias Voss. He looked up slowly. Skin gray, She kept me, he whispered, so I could echo. Mara lifted her gun. You're not him? No, he said. And what's left of him? His head tilted toward the spiral. She's awake now. Not because we freed her, but because you remembered. And then he stepped backward into the dark. The voice rose to meet them. The voice rose like fog, rolling up from the spiral stairway and weaving through the air. It wasn't a scream or a chant. It was almost comforting, and that made it worse. Agent Mara Coyle stood frozen at the rim of the sinkhole, staring down into the dark where Elias Voss had disappeared. Again, he had looked, emptied. His eyes weren't blank. They were full of something she didn't want to name, something watching through him. She kept me so I could echo. The words rang in her skull like a bell she couldn't unring. Behind her, the recovery team was unraveling. Sayer was hunched near the edge, covering his ears, mumbling Latin phrases from the recovered files. 2 others had already fled into the trees, armed, terrified, unspeaking. Mara stood alone now, holding the detonator. We blow the whole site, she muttered. Collapse everything again. But her thumb wouldn't move. Her muscles refused. The voice soothed. From the sinkhole came a gust of warm wind, scented with rot and memory. A low vibration passed through the earth, and with it, a shape. Not fully formed. Just there the woman, not walking, not floating, simply present. Her face changed as Mara stared first. It was someone Mara remembered vaguely from childhood, then her mother, then her own face. No, Mara whispered. You're not real? She turned to Sayer. No, W. Call in a burn order. We airstrike this zone. But Sayer just shook his head, eyes wide. She's already in the team. She's already in you. Suddenly the air shimmered, like heat, and Mara was somewhere else. Not physically, but in her mind. The jungle dissolved. She stood in a long hallway, military gray. A memory. 2009. The intelligence debrief, where she'd first read about Echo Site 12. A minor footnote. A failed experiment in psychic warfare, the document had claimed. But she'd flagged it. She'd reopened the file. She had remembered it. You're the one who brought them here, a voice said. She turned. Elias Voss stood at the end of the corridor, bleeding, hands outstretched. You called us in. Your whisper started the chain. You unlocked her. Mara backed away. That's not true. It was. She had made the call. She had sent the team. It's not because of strategy, but because of curiosity. The thread she couldn't let go. And now she was part of the story. And the story was alive. Back in the jungle, her eyes snapped open. The voice was still singing. She gritted her teeth, reached for her gun. We end this now. Sayer stepped in front of her. If you destroy the site, she'll just move. That's what she wants. She's a parasite of memory. Collapse this place, and she lives in every survivor, every story. Then what? Mara growled. We let her out. Let her sing to the world. No, Sayer said. He handed her a small syringe. Mara frowned. What is this suppressor? He said. Experimental neural inhibitor. If we dose ourselves, we forget. Memory deactivated. She can't root in what isn't stored. You want to wipe our minds? She wins. If we remember her. Mara looked at the spiral again. She thought of Elias. She thought of Huxley. She thought of all the names. Lost in the trees. Could she forget them? Should she? Long silence. Then she nodded. They each injected the dose. Pain bloomed immediately behind. Mara's eyes, like her brain was unlearning itself. She felt her knees. The spiral blurred. The symbols drifted from view. The name La Madre lost its shape, and then darkness. 4 months later, Washington, D.C. Langley agent Mara Coyle sat in a debriefing room, staring at a blank wall. Across from her, a government psychiatrist flipped through a thin folder. You've made full physical recovery, he said. But cognitive gaps remain. She said nothing. He tapped a page. Your file says you led an extraction mission in Bolivia. Do you recall what the target was? She blinked. No. Do you recall who was with you? Silence. Do you remember a man named Elias Voss? A flicker behind her eyes. She shook her head. No. The psychiatrist nodded. Very well. You're cleared for reassignment. That night, Mara walked through her apartment, turning off the lights. But before she reached the bedroom, she froze. The hallway light flickered. She heard humming, a woman's voice, soft, gentle, in the background of her mind, like something she used to know. A lullaby without words. She shook her head, rubbed her temples. It faded, but in the mirror behind her, reflectionist shape stood, not smiling, not moving, just watching.